Hey, what's up guys? This is Bailey Stein with Android Authority, and you're watching our video review of the Vivo V3Max. So the V3Max does look at least a little bit similar to a phone starting with I and ending with own. Regardless, it would be pretty dismissive to ignore Vivo's unmistakably premium design. Vivo's implementation of a metallic shell combined with carefully crafted curves gives the V3Max a remarkably nice look and feel. And while some will be hesitant to purchase the gold variant, you should know that the gold is very light and barely noticeable in most lighting. The build quality is excellent here, and the physical softness of the metal makes the V3Max feel a bit unique in the hand relative to other similarly designed smartphones, although the latter does come at the expense of being a tad slippery and less scratch resistant. For what it's worth, our unit only accumulated a couple of minor scratches after a few weeks of use, however. The three capacitive keys found on the bottom of the V3Max are unfortunately not illuminated, and the choice of a menu key rather than a multitasking key may seem fairly odd, although it is understandable once you realize that FunTouchOS offers swipe-based multitasking. The 5.5-inch 1080p display looks pretty good, with a good amount of saturation and great viewing angles. It is lacking a tad in terms of contrast, however, and sunlight readability is surprisingly bad. Strangely enough, the front display material feels a bit plastic-like, which makes it more susceptible to fingerprints and scratches. You'll likely be happy with the display overall, but when compared to displays on phones like the Xiaomi Mi 5 or even Meizu M2 Note, there is a noticeable difference in terms of quality. The V3Max is being marketed as faster than faster, and it's no slouch when it comes to day-to-day performance. Despite its mid-range Snapdragon 652 processor, the V3Max performs well enough to be comparable to phones with higher-end chips like the Snapdragon 808. Of course, Vivo's implementation of 4GB of RAM surely helps in that regard, while also leaving plenty of room for multitasking. There's also the Adreno 510 GPU, which results in a very positive experience when playing even high-end games like Asphalt 8. In the US, the V3Max is able to receive HSPA Plus in all areas on the AT&T network and some areas on the T-Mobile network. Call quality was notably pleasant with the Vivo, and it's always great to see unlocked dual SIM devices. You can repurpose the phone's nano SIM slot for a microSD card up to 128GB if the 32GB of internal storage just isn't enough, and you're cool with using the micro SIM slot exclusively. We were quite impressed with the fingerprint reader found on the back of the V3Max, as it was able to beat both the Huawei Nexus 6P and Xiaomi Mi 5 in our testing. Vivo has included a hi-fi audio chip for higher sound quality through headphones, and the difference is noticeable when compared to other mid-range devices. However, unless you use higher quality headphones and stream at a higher bitrate, it's difficult to notice anything day-to-day beyond a minor difference. What you are likely to notice, however, is the high quality of the speaker, which impressed us with its loud volume and low distortion. Although many prefer front-facing speakers, the speaker here is still pretty good. Although the battery is relatively small at 3000 mAh, we consistently reached 6 hours of screen-on time with variable usage and often noticed impressively long standby times, sometimes more than 24 hours. There are several power consumption profiles available for use within the iManager app, if you do need to extend the battery life further. And once the phone inevitably does run out of juice, you can take advantage of the phone's fast charging technology. Of course, we have to talk about the 13-megapixel rear camera with phase detection autofocus. In good lighting conditions, we were generally happy with the images that the V3Max produced, as most came out sharp with good color reproduction and plenty of dynamic range. We did notice that the device tended to underexpose, however, especially when shooting outdoors. Thankfully, this can be quickly adjusted with the well-implemented exposure compensation slider. Unfortunately, we were pretty disappointed with the phone's low-light performance, as it offered results that were oftentimes just too noisy and distorted. It's also worth mentioning that the phone is not capable of recording 4K video, a feature which some users may miss at this price point. Although the camera software does have a strong iOS vibe, it's very functional and easy to use. The many different camera modes are easily accessible and offer first-time explanations, which will definitely help guide some users. Things do get quite interesting once we take a look at the V3 Max's software. It's running Vivo's custom FunTouchOS 2.5 on top of Android 5.1 Lollipop. Unfortunately, because it is shipping with the 1.5-year-old Lollipop, certain features like Google Now on tap and fingerprint reader access for third-party apps are missing with no substitute. Although that is a little annoying, FunTouch may not be so fun for stock Android enthusiasts, as the OS makes several major changes, like moving the notification toggles and the multitasking menu into a control center, and removing the app drawer. With that and app names like iMusic, iTheme, and iManager, it's difficult to deny that Vivo has found a great amount of inspiration within iOS. Overall, FunTouchOS is fairly easy to use, but it can take some time to get used to. There are also certain areas that feel like they could use more polish, but there are also some very nice features like S-Capture, which gives you several options when wanting to share your screen. The Vivo V3 Max is now available globally in either gold or rose gold. You can pick it up in India for about 24,000 rupees, or about $355. The Vivo V3 Max is a smartphone that is great at many things, like design, performance, audio, battery life, and camera quality. However, like any other smartphone, it does have its flaws. We would have loved to see US availability and US 4G LTE support, as well as better glass covering the display and a less iOS-like software experience. And while it does shine in many key areas, the Xiaomi Mi 5 is simply a more well-rounded option for about the same price. Unless you need the even better battery life, better speaker, or just prefer the V3 Max's design, you may be better off by purchasing a Xiaomi Mi 5 instead. With that said, Vivo's efforts are not to be diluted, and we must note that this is still a great mid-range smartphone, but with today's highly competitive market, great only goes so far. Thank you for watching our video review of the Vivo V3 Max. Please be sure to give it a thumbs up below if you did enjoy it, and also don't forget to subscribe if you haven't already. Finally, be sure to visit the Android Authority website for additional coverage, as we are your source for all things Android.